Welcome, everyone. I'm Greg Stanley. I'm here with Wes Warren, Dr. Peterson, Lori, and our special guest today is Gary Bird of SMC National. And we've got him on for a very specific topic, and that is, when you're trying to feed associates new patients, you feel that responsibility weighing on you. What can Gary do? What can you do to give us a patient that associate has a better chance of surviving with? So if any of you have something to share or ask, we'll be calling on you. But for now, Gary, can you take that question and kind of run with it?
Absolutely. Thank you, first of all, for the opportunity. And it's good to see everybody here today. And everybody, I know there's lots of people who are watching now and then lots of people who will be watching after. My name's Gary. I'm the CEO of SMC National. We do dental marketing for practices just like yours, and we help people have predictable new patient flow. And one of the things that, to Greg's point, is, when you're driving in new patients and you're sending them to an associate, that can be really tricky. So there's a couple things that you want to do to make sure to set your associate up for success. One of the biggest things that that I've seen, Greg, is that, first of all, if your practice name is Dr. Smith DDS and you're sending in new patients, guess who everybody's going to want to see?
Dr.
Smith DDS, right? So it's better to have a more universal name. So you could even have your name still in there. So if you call it like Smith and Associates or Smith Dental Group, something like that, you can still keep your name in it and modify it. That helps out big time, because the patients honestly don't know who the owner doctor is and who isn't when they're a new patient. They really don't know that. If we're setting them up for that and we're telling them, hey, I'm the owner doctor, but I'm sending you over to this guy, that's where there becomes a little bit of a rub. The other thing that's really, really important is, and I know this sounds so simple, but it's really impactful, is when you're doing your marketing, you want to make sure that you're hitting areas that can actually afford the treatment that you want them to come in for. And that's just as simple as where you're targeting. And that plays a huge part in case acceptance, because if you're driving in people for treatment that they just flat out can't afford, not only are your associates not going to be successful, but the patients aren't going to be, happy, and you're not going to be happy either.
I ask a question on that.
Yeah.
Do a lot of companies that our doctors work with, do they really target certain areas, or do you see most companies just do a blanket? Give us some feedback on what you tend to see other companies do,
yeah,
and how they can maybe tailor or talk to that company to be more successful and do what you're.
Absolutely. So normal industry standard is 3 miles around your practice. That's if you just draw a circle around it and say, hey, hit those 3 miles around the practice. That's what most people do. And that's the easiest way to set up your targeting. If I was talking to a marketing company, if I was a dentist, I was talking to a marketing company, what I would do is I would give them a list of all my good patients, put that in parentheses, like the patients that you're like, these are the patients, new patients, or the patients that we've seen over the last couple of years that have been great. And then what you want to do is you want to plot the. Oh, go ahead.
Somebody.
Oh, okay. So what you want to do is you want to plot those on a map. And then what you want to do is overlay those maps over income segments. So then you're going to be able to see high income, medium income, low income, and then you're going to be able to see exactly where those quality patients have come from.
Hello.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And can any company do this, or should we expect any company to do this?
I mean, there's tons of I mean, we're in the day of AI now, right? You could probably get a machine to do it for you, but you just got to know which tools to go to and which tools to use. So most people
and we should expect them to do this, or is this something we have to go to?
I would not say that it's industry standard. I think most people probably go the route of you letting the dentist direct what they want. So they're going to say, hey, what do you want, doc? And you're going to say, I want more new patients. They're going to go, okay, cool. Here, draw a circle around it. That's the easiest. It's the least amount of work for for the agency.
I'm surprised to find most of the people the doctors are working with, when we describe geofencing, they go, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that." So
Yeah.
high marks, Gary.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Gary, I'd like to ask a question about geofencing.
Yeah.
I had a client tell me the other day that they work with a different company. They said that they were told that Google does not allow specific geofencing, such as within a block or a building, so forth. Is that accurate, and is that a change? Because I can recall geofencing being more detailed in the past.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. Google is constantly updating and blocking and changing the way that they do things, but there's always workarounds, right? So you just have to basically go in there and map, instead of typing in the building name and saying, I want to target this building, you kind of have to draw a little circle around them. And you can draw the smallest circle I think you can draw is like 1 kilometer. So you can get really close and really tight onto a building, but it takes manual labor. Like someone has to actually physically go in there and start dropping those into the ads.
Which fits the description you said of just drawing a circle around it 3 miles out, because that's a whole lot easier.
So much easier. It's just less time. And the other thing is too, you got to remember, most marketing companies, unless they're a dental specific marketing company, they don't even know the difference between like a prophy and clear aligners. Like they're not thinking about how these patients are going to come in through your office. They don't understand that there's only 3 ways to really come into a dental office. So you got hygiene, you got
Emergency.
the doctor's schedule, which is emergency, and then you got consultation. So those are really the only 3 ways. And then from there, you have different levels of how you're going to attract that person in and how your team's going to handle that. And if you don't understand that from a dental's perspective, from a dentist's perspective, and from the patient's perspective, then marketing is just, hey, just put this out there and hopefully we get some people. The other big one that I see people make mistakes on all the time is like the word dental implants. People go, oh, I want dental implants. Well, if you just go target the word dental implants, which is one of the highest search words in dental right now, you're just going to get a ton of leads, but none of them are going to come in. And the reason why is because they're very high in the funnel. They're still researching, and you have to go about attracting them in different ways. And this is true for every segment. Hygiene is different than dental. Like the hygiene patients that you're going to get are different than the dental emergency patients that you're going to get. They have different priorities and different things matter to them. So if you have a really tight hygiene schedule and you want more production, then emergency patients are great, but you better be able to get them in right away, right? Because they're in pain, they're very motivated to come in, or they have they chipped their tooth and they want to get it fixed right away. So time is of the essence with those patients. And so there's tons of give and take there on all those different kinds of patients.
What would you say over the last couple of years has kind of really changed? And that as far as our doctors listening should be aware of, and what advice would you give them that they might not normally hear? Obviously, they're not going to hear from their marketing company, because a lot of times they just set you up and forget about you, is what I typically see from most companies. But can you give people advice, as far as what you've seen in the last couple of years and how they should interface with their company that they use?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's this thing called the black hole of marketing. So we've set out on a mission to be able to track patients end to end, meaning all the way from the click to all the way to when they're scheduling their next hygiene appointment. And that's, I think, in that we've learned some things. So I'm just going to give you a scenario, and I'm going to use even numbers just so it makes sense. So if you start off with a $10,000 marketing budget, you are going to drive in a bunch of calls. Right now, the industry standard for unanswered calls is 35% during normal business hours, which is massive. Like most businesses would go out of business. Like most businesses in the world outside of dental, if you didn't answer 35% of your calls, you wouldn't be open. But in dental, that is standard. That is average now. And there's a labor crunch. That number has gone up substantially over the last several years since COVID. And so right off the top, that means if you're spending $10,000, you are now losing $3,500 to unanswered calls. really, even if you have the most amazing marketing company in the world, it's really hard to overcome that. From there, the average phone conversion for a marketing lead. So if a marketing patient calls your office, right? Well, let me back up. If you don't know what your unanswered call rate is, you're probably around the average. So the number one thing I hear all the time is, oh, there's no way we're missing 35% of our calls. I sit by the desk, I listen. If you're not tracking it and actually monitoring it, I would be willing to bet that you're in that average range. And like really good right now in the dental industry is like 15% unanswered rate. That's like an office that's really focused on getting their unanswered calls down. And it's because there's a labor crunch, and there's also the front desk is being pulled in like a million different directions. Then from there, the average phone conversion for a marketing new patient. So if a marketing new patient calls an office, the average conversion rate on those are about 50%. So now you have this problem where you spent $10,000, you lost $3,500 down the drain from not answering your phone, and now you have about $3,000 to $3,300 that because of conversion issues, and that's average. Then from there, the average time to appointment.
What should they convert? What's a goal? Like if you were to say, okay, and I would agree, that's what I see, but what's a worthy goal for people to be at as far as converting these people?
Well, if they're at average, you want to get them. First of all, you want to track what their marketing conversion is, not the totality of all new patients, because patient referrals are easy to convert. Anybody can hop on the phone and convert a patient referral or a doctor referral. Marketing patients are a little tougher. So first of all, you want to know what that conversion rate is. Second, you want to aim for about 70% and then 80%. And then I've seen offices even get up to 90%, but you want to make sure those percentages continue to climb. And if you're tracking it, you can actually see that. And then from there, average time to appointment right now for the average dental office is floating around 10 days, which is a huge problem because new patients do not want to wait 10 days to come into the dental office. When they decide, hey, I'm going to call, it's time to they want to go. And that can drive your no-show rate for marketing new patients up to 30%. So now, and again, you can't really see that number. That's why I call it these black hole numbers, because most people cannot see these. The marketing company can't see it, and the office can't see it usually. And so what that creates is if you spend $10,000, you are now walking away with about $2,000 worth of marketing coming through your door. That's assuming the marketing company executed perfectly. It's impossible to be successful with that. So what we have done is we've spent tons and tons of money, energy, and resources to be able to track all these things. So that way we can help offices when they're not converting. Hey, here's why. And in our early days, we couldn't track these things. And so we couldn't ever figure out, why are some offices really successful and why are others not? Like the traffic's the same. If the targeting's the same, what's the problem here? And this black hole that I'm talking about is by far the biggest issue that dental offices face. Now, how do you fix that? So number one, at the front desk, we really recommend outsourcing that. So we work with several people who can you can hire overseas. They speak English, and you literally train them. You can get them for $1,000 to $2,000 a month. They're a full-time employee, and we will go in there and train them for you and train them to your SOPs and get them all up to speed. So that way you're not missing calls anymore. That's huge. Then there's also companies out there that catch rollover calls. So let's say you have 10 people call at once, but you only have 2 or 3 people able to answer the phone. Then there's companies out there that can catch those, and they just charge per call and per conversion. They're not perfect. They're probably in that 70% range conversion, but it's better than missing the call. And the people from overseas, they can get up almost as good as an office person. So you can get them up into the 80% conversion rate. Just like an American team member. So that's how you solve that part. The conversion rate is just training and accountability, having clear KPIs. Average time to appointment's tricky. That one we can't fix unless you hire another hygienist. But what we can do is focus on different segments of patients. So if your hygiene schedule's booked out for the next 5 months, then don't attract hygiene patients. Let's attract, implants, clear aligners, or emergency type patients. And those you can get into your schedule right away, boost your production. That generates more revenue. Then you can go pay a hygienist, whatever they're charging now, $400 an hour or whatever it is, and bring them in. So.
Questions? Very good. I have a question for you, Gary.
Yeah.
What are we probably going to have to, well, let me back up. A lot of times we see doctors looking at the associate idea. In other words, what's it going to take? I've got a couple operatories sitting here. I've got an extra staff person, but I don't have the new patients to feed them. And if they bring one in before they realize that, they try to give them referrals to him or her, and that fails.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how you start that chicken versus the egg process? What comes first, patients or the associate?
Well, you want to make sure you are, obviously, if you have time and you have downtime, obviously you want to get patients in first. But if you and you want to make sure you have a system. So even if you're only going to come in and spend, a couple $1,000s a month, you want to make sure that you have a system that's scalable. The worst thing you can do, hire an associate and then cross your fingers that the marketing works, if that makes sense, because now you have this massive bill and you don't have anything to feed that associate. Now you're at risk at losing the associate that you just spent all this time, money, and resources to attract and to convince to come work with you. And you're really betting your future on, is this marketing company that we've never worked with before able to do what we want them to do? So if I was a dentist, what I would do is I would hire the marketing company, ensure that they can drive the patients, maybe not to the volume that I need for the associate, but that they can turn it up and off, up and
Good.
on. If you can't turn it up and down, then you have an issue.
Can I ask a question about what to expect? So you got rural areas, and then you've got kind of, then you move to kind of like LA and everything in between. So suburbia. What's the cost of acquisition on average, comparing to LA, like the worst scenario, to like Phoenix, and then to, areas where it might be easier, which I would assume it's more like country and rural areas.
Well, some rural
What are you
areas,
seeing? Yeah, what are you seeing?
It depends on the area, right? So I'll give you ranges. So for GP patients, which is basically hygiene type patients,
right,
you're going to be looking at a cost per lead as low as $80 all the way up to $175. Now that doesn't mean the person's coming in your office, right? That's just the opportunity is created. And then the cost per acquisition is going to range from $125 to $275. Your ROI should range somewhere between 4-to-1 to 5-to-1 in the first 90 days from that patient. So that's GP. I'll say those numbers one more time. So cost to make the phone ring, 80 to 175. Cost per acquisition, that means to get them in the seat, is 125 to 275. I have pedo. I don't know if we have any pedo. I'll just give you what pedo is.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So pedo Medicaid is $30 to $100 cost per lead. And then $50 to $150 cost per acquisition. ROI is much lower, 2-to-1, 3-to-1.
So can I just help these doctors to understand this? If your marketing company isn't driving leads, if you're a GP at 80 to 175, that's your number. That's the thing to fix. If you're seeing your cost of acquisition kind of floating at, or actually people through the door hovering in that $200 range, you're good. But if it starts to drift up near 300, it may be your people, I think is what you're saying, right? Training and systems.
People, training systems. Yeah, there's something there that the marketing company can't see and usually doesn't take responsibility for. And it's invisible to the office as well. The other thing, most people are around cost per acquisition around $500 is what we typically see. And but they think they're at about the $200 mark. And the reason that they think that is what they do is they take their marketing budget. Again, I'm just going to use round numbers. Let's say $10,000 and you have 100 new patients. They go, well, 100 times, divided by 10,000, that's about $100 cost per acquisition. I'm doing great, but they don't realize that that's all patients. You want to only look at your marketing patients. So if you only have 20 from marketing and 80 from patient referrals, Now you're at a much higher number. Now you're at $500 cost per acquisition, and the marketing doesn't look quite as good as the first scenario.
Gary, for people who are looking to get an associate, maybe they even got an old friend that wants to come in, what are they going to have to spend to fill them up so that the associate doesn't cannibalize the owner,
Yeah.
so that that associate is feeling like, wow, this is great, this flow of patients?
Yep. So usually it depends. Well, there's one component that I can't answer for, is the speed of the associate. So I'm going to give you ranges, because not all associates are created equal from a skill set standpoint. So let's assume that the associate needs 30 to 50 new patients a month, depending on their speed. So if
Okay.
you're looking at 30, I'm just going to do some quick math here. So 30 new patients a month times let's just put I'll go with the high number, 275 times 275. So that would be 30 new patients. You're going to be on the high side, $8,000. Low side, you're going to be $4,000.
So if you're not willing to spend that, inviting an associate to the practice and putting them in the system probably isn't realistic.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Unless you're just giving them your new patients.
Anybody have a question? Just raise your hand, or yeah. Okay.
What about larger treatment? So we talked about general dentistry. So obviously we've got a lot of people doing implants, a lot of people doing TMJ stuff and sleep apnea, all these kind of different things. Any comments on cost of acquisition of a lot of sedation offices, obviously larger. I know that's a little harder to drive.
Yeah,
leads to
sedation's
that.
harder because the
Right.
general public doesn't, it's not something that they're necessarily searching for per se. So it's
Can
more
you give
just,
us your feedback on implants, what you see on kind of these
So-
larger all-on-4 type cases?
yeah. So for patients that are not recurring patients, meaning they're not like GP or pedo where they're coming back, getting their hygiene, all those kind of things. We look at that a little bit different. So we look at that from a CAC standpoint, cost to acquire a customer or cost per start. And so for larger, like full arch, you are looking at between 1,200 to 2,500 to acquire a start for each start. Now, keep in mind the ROI on these are insane. So it's 750 to 1,000 to 1 ROI on that. So the amount of money that you're paying to get that person to start is much lower than what they're actually going to pay you. Single implants are 450 to 900, and the ROI on those are 4 to 1 to 6 to 1. And then when you get into like the clear aligners of Invisalign, cost per start is 500 to 1,000, and the ROI is 500 to 700%.
Okay. Any advice you would give our doctors, if they were starting out this road, and if you were them, talking and interviewing marketing companies, what are the things you would ask the marketing company, knowing what you know and trying to be objective, obviously trying to really help people here?
Yeah, 100%. So if I've worked through this a lot, and I've worked with a lot of other, I work with a lot of dental agencies. They come to us, and we kind of, I'm happy to work with people and help them grow their agencies as well. So we talk about these kind of things a lot. The number one thing that I see the dentists get themselves in trouble with these marketing agencies is that if you go to a marketing agency and you say, hey, I want a new website, they're going to change your website, and they're going to do it the way you ask them to do it. But if you say, hey, I want social media, or hey, I want SEO, or hey, whatever the service is that you're asking for, they're going to give it to you. Just like if a patient comes to you and says, hey, I want veneers, you're going to be like, okay, we'll give you veneers. But what you have to actually do with these marketing companies, you have to tell them what the outcomes that you're expecting. You have to start at the end. So you have to say, hey, I need 50 more new patients because I'm hiring an associate. What do we need to do to get there? And they may say, hey, change your website, or they may say, hey, social media or SEO. But if you go in and you try to piecemeal all the services together to get to where you want to go, it might work. It might. Or it might blow up in your face too. So that just starting at the end, and then listen to them. Listen to what they tell you. If you start at the end and say, hey, I want 50 new patients a month, what do we need to spend to do that? And they're just say, oh yeah, we'll start making videos on social, and that's all they tell you, and it's, a couple $100 a month, right away, like, hey, okay, there's something off about this. This is not going to probably give me the outcomes that I want, because they didn't actually give you the recipe to do that. They should be working backwards from, okay, this is what we see from cost per acquisition. How are you on the phones? They should be asking you those kind of questions. What's your availability look like? If they're not asking you those questions, then they're not thinking about that black hole that I explained to you before, which can get you in massive trouble.
How about a budget? Like, let's say you got me. I would spend $8,000 a month if you could actually deliver a marketing company. But I want to test you out first. I want to see if you can deliver something. What would you recommend our doctors kind of starting off with to see a marketing company be able to deliver? Because obviously everybody promises the moon.
Of course.
And to start off spending 8,000-9,000 with a marketing company seems insane to me.
Was the high end. That was
Right.
the high end.
So
it's around $3,000. If you're spending $500 or $1,000, it's really hard to market with that amount of money. Just because if you look, if the average marketing company is driving a cost per acquisition of $500, spend $1,000, you're talking about 2 patients.
You statistically could go months without a new patient from
statistically, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. So
And
you think around 3,000 to test a company with. Now, do companies still demand contracts like 3 months, 4 months? Should you stay away from that? What's your recommendations there?
Yes, I mean, yeah, we don't put people in contracts, but as long as it's a short-term contract. If it's a year contract, then it's like, okay, I don't want to be locked into this. But if it's a 3-month thing or 2-month thing, it's going to take you a little time to figure out if it's working for you or not. And then again, also, you really want to think about this comprehensively, right? Like, it's like if a patient comes into you and they're drinking soda every day, and they're pounding 8 liters of Mountain Dew every day, and their teeth are all rotted out, and they're like, fix my teeth. Well, you can fix their teeth, but that's not going to fix the problem. They're going to end up in the same exact scenario if they don't fix the underlying problem. And so you want to have somebody that's going to be able to help you fix the underlying problem. If you have an operational labor shortage, no marketing can fix that. It's impossible.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It could be you could bring in the best marketer in the world, right? You could have Elon Musk tweeting about your office every single day. Won't matter, because you're not answering the phones. If you have people who aren't trained at the front desk properly, and they're not being held accountable with actual numbers, it doesn't matter. Your marketing doesn't matter. If your average time to appointment is 3 weeks out, it literally doesn't matter. And these are the most crucial things in marketing that I have seen. And I have a role that I always tell people, doesn't matter how successful I am, I can never be more successful than the front desk person, because that's your first line of defense. That right there is the bottleneck of every single dental office in every single city and every single state across the country is your front desk. And so why wouldn't we track that? Why wouldn't we know what our unanswered call rate is? Why wouldn't we know what the average phone conversion rate is for them? That is crucial to your overall success. So you want to have a marketing company who's going to work on that with you, or somebody is going to work on that with you.
What about results? So obviously we've worked with a lot of marketing companies over the years I've been at Whitehall, so it's 20 some years now. And I've heard all kinds of funny things about results. You got to wait months and months and it builds up. And obviously SEO, there's some truth to that. Mm-hmm. Give us an idea of, okay, I hired this company. I spent $3,000. I wrote the check today. They ding my card today. When do the calls start happening? And what should I expect?
Yeah, so there's always going to be a little bit of a setup, some kind of setup period. Everybody's a little bit different with that. It might be as fast as a week or two. It might take a month. But that's the setup period, right? So there's things
And
that
there's
you
usually a charge for that, right? There's a
100%. Yeah.
Right.
There's always, because there's work. There's foundational things that need to be adjusted and changed typically.
okay.
If you're going to want to improve things. So then from there,
Once
then
we
you
go
should-
live, once we go live, we're past the setup. Now we're into the pay-per-click. We're live, if you will.
yeah, you should start seeing new patients right away. Now there might be adjustments. There might be like, oh, this market's much harder. This market's much easier. So that can vary, but you shouldn't be waiting months and months and months. The one exception to that is like when you get into all-in-4, that's a lead nurture game. So there's CRMs involved. There's somebody following up with them. That is a whole different game, and I could go down that road. That and the buying cycles are crazy compared to like GP. So, but the buying cycles of GP patients are relatively short. So most people are getting on their computer right now, today or tomorrow. They're typing in dentist near me. They're finding a dentist, and within 3 minutes, they're making a decision. And within a couple of days, they want to be in a dental office at the longest. And so that buying cycle is really, really short. So if we interject an office into that buying cycle, you should be able to start getting people right away. Now, again, if you don't, I've had this actually happen. We've had people who had like 60% unanswered call rates. And so right away out of the box, we're like, hey, this isn't going to work. Like we're literally throwing your money down the drain. We got to fix that. So then that takes time to build infrastructure to get either hire somebody or get another team member or bring in somebody to support around that. So you got to keep that in mind.
But as far as the marketing company is concerned, the lead should be delivered pretty quickly.
Yes.
You might have internal problems that
But again, you got to be able to
lead you to believe the marketing company is not working well.
Bingo.
Right.
Yes. That's the point, is that if you don't know if it's the marketing company or you, that's where you just get in this cycle of working with marketing company after marketing company after marketing company.
Okay, great.
All of them somehow need 6 months to a year to tell that it's not working.
Yeah,
And you could go on the rest of your life like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And take 5 years to cycle through 5 marketing companies. And
Right.
again, and maybe it is the market. I don't want to badmouth any marketing companies. Maybe it is the marketing company, or maybe there's other bandwidth issues.
I got one last question from me, and I hear this a lot. So we have a lot of people that I deal with that are looking at marketing companies, and everybody wants to redo the website. It's like, we got to completely redo the website. In other words, to start with us, we got to throw out your old website, which you're really proud of, or is that true? Or is that, when you hear that, is that something that you go, yeah, you kind of do? Or is it something that they kind of just want to take from the other company and own, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it depends. This one's tricky. So some if the website's already working, like you can see it working, patients are going to it, they're scheduling those kind of things, then you might have something there, and you can just take that and build off the top of that. So you get a site that looks fairly similar. But from a technical standpoint, it's hard for a marketing company to promise you anything when they're building on top of the foundation somebody else built, because there's a lot underneath the hood that we don't know about. And what I can relate this to is if a patient comes to you and says, hey, I got an implant at another doctor, I would love for you to put the crown and the abutment in for me and guarantee that the crown, abutment, and implant is going to all last for the next 20 years. You're going to say, I'm sorry, I can't promise that implant's going to last. I think that doctor is a great doctor, but I can't guarantee their work. And there's a lot under there that I can't see, and how they did it, what part, there's a lot I just can't see. And that's basically what you're asking a marketing company to do when you have a website already and you're saying, hey, I want you to build on what I already have. I'm not willing to change it at all. And you're basically asking them to guarantee that, hey, I'm going to put a crown on, and I'm guaranteeing the implant that somebody else built. So it puts marketing companies in a sticky situation there. Most will say, okay, fine. But again, there might be underlying issues that they're agreeing to that they don't realize.
So the reality is, you switch companies, the company's probably gonna, if they're a good company, from what you're saying, is they're gonna want to switch, because even though they can see the code, it's not so easy to see the underlying issues of how it was built. And was it effective? Might be, might not be, and there's just no way to know. And
Yeah,
so the company just has to.
If you're hiring somebody to drive you new patients, your website is the central hub of making that happen. So you should, bare minimum, be having a conversation of, do I have what's needed to do what I want to do? That should be in the conversation.
How often would you say your company has to redo the website when you pick up a new client? Is that something that's very common?
Probably about 60 to 75% of the time.
Okay, so it's not all.
No, it's not always. Sometimes there's websites that are totally fine to use, and they're like, I love it. I love the colors, and the patients love it. And we look at it and we go, okay, that's pretty close to what we would recommend. Let us move this over to our platform, which the thing is for tracking purposes, there's still an overhaul that has to happen. It's the same amount of work for us either way, but from a visual standpoint, you're getting the same end result.
Right. Okay. That's my question. Thanks, Gary.
Anybody
else
Gary?
with questions?
Gary, I have a question for you. So many people nowadays are trying, some successfully, some not, but they want to get out of plans. They want to, because those things have gotten so effective at discounting until the doctors, when they get a patient, aren't sure they're coming out ahead. What have you learned about being in plans versus being out of plans, and how it impacts your marketing?
Yeah, so most of the doctors that we work with are fee for service, and then they're in network with like 1 or 2, 3 plans.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that's with the vast majority of the people that we work with. A lot of it's just how you answer the questions on the phone. If there's some just magic things that you can say or not say that will absolutely destroy the new patient. Most new patients don't call and ask if you're in network with them. They just ask, hey, do you take our insurance? And that is a conversation that you can have with them on the phone and really go down that road of, are you a PPO? You know, is it a PPO? Yeah. Okay. We build almost all PPOs, or we build all PPOs. Let's get you in. We'll take care of you, blah, blah, blah. That's still, you'll still might end up with a patient here or there that might get upset. Like, hey, this doesn't make sense. But to be honest with you, dental insurance is confusing. Even for the people that are experts in it, it's confusing. And so it's really hard to navigate that conversation over the phone.
One of the problems we run into is that people can literally be steered away from us. Like, you're all about getting us people, but they can be steered away when they go to the website and find out they don't see their insurance plan on our website.
Yeah, I don't recommend putting insurance plans on your website and those kind of, we take these, like, then what you're saying is we don't take all the others, which is not necessarily true. The other thing is that your front desk is usually scaring people away too. So they'll hear you say things like, I hate insurance, which may totally be true, but then they translate that to, nope, sorry, don't come here. We don't want you. And that's not always necessarily true, right? Like, if someone needs implants, you don't want insurance being the reason that they don't come to your office.
Do you try to build in a Google review element of your marketing to make sure that things are going to connect?
Well, it's really important to have Google reviews. So I don't see a lot of dental offices that are even in the conversation of marketing without Google reviews. Like, you have to have Google reviews. It's not, I don't even bump into those kind of people very often. If you have 5 or 6 Google reviews, get on that as soon as possible. Like, before that's if there's one thing that you can do in marketing that is easy, that's going to be very, very effective, and is going to help you with everything: patient referrals, doctor referrals, new patient flow, Google reviews. Like, you have to have those. But yeah, there's lots of now softwares, Greg, that are just easy that you can plug in and get a lot of reviews really fast.
Good. Any questions for Gary? Because we're going to turn him loose unless somebody has a question for him. Gary, if somebody wants to talk to you, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, our website, I'll put it in the chat here. It's smcnational.com. And you can reach out to us there, and we'll get you guys set up. We usually just take and do an evaluation. So we look at your office, we put them over those maps that we were talking about. And then we figure out, okay, well, how many new patients do you actually want to get? And then we tell you, this is what we think that these cost per acquisitions are going to cost in that market. It may make great sense, or it may not make financial sense. And then from there, you can make an educated decision. And yeah, usually what we see is usually if we can usually move your marketing budget over and see about a 20% bump in new patient flow.
One other point, Dr. Peterson and Wes and I have both all seen this. If you get a marketing company that's actually delivering on their promises, as they get more popular, as they get more successful, it seems they have less time to spend getting us new patients until we're not even getting what we paid for. Can you comment on that, Gary?
Yeah, absolutely. This is where tracking really comes down to it. If you have to be able to track what is my cost per acquisition for the number of patients that we're driving in, and then you hold people accountable to that. Just like your front desk has to be held accountable to a number, your marketing company has to be held accountable to a number.
Okay.
So
Last questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good. Dr. Peterson, anything you want to add?
No, he pretty much answered all my questions. So
Wes?
Gary, thanks again.
Oh, Gary,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you
Gary,
for
thank
the
you.
guys.
information.
We're going to go on to our next question. So thank you, Gary.
Awesome. You guys have a great day. Thank you. Good
Okay.
seeing
Thanks,
everybody.
Gary.
Bye-bye.
A problem we'll run into, and it really falls along the lines of what Gary was talking about, you know, that you can't do any better in marketing than your front desk. You know, if you have, you know, your wide receiver on the football team has his hands greased, I mean, he's going to drop the ball every time. Some of you are paying for phone calls that are dropped by the person at the front desk. Wes?
I want to comment on that because I worked on an office just recently. We got out a network with Blue Cross, and I specifically had them track new patients that called with Blue Cross. And I taught them the scripting, you know, how to answer all these questions, probably 6 months or a year ago, but we just recently got out. And they went 0 for 12 with Blue Cross people, scheduling with their office. It was a disaster, you know? And so I said, okay, what are you saying? And what they said, I just went like, oh, geez, that's not what you're supposed to say. It's not what we trained on. And we covered it again, right? Now they're 7 for 9. In other words, it makes a difference what these people say, how they're trained. The difference was staggering between the two.
So many front desk people are selling the idea that that was a bad patient.
Mhm.
And when in fact, they were a bad staff person is the truth.
I mean, just think about it. You know, you're working all day, every day. It's you out of the month, you might get 3 calls yourself on Blue Cross, let's say. I mean, it just happens so infrequently. Are you really going to remember all the things Wes told you? And, you know, not unless I drill it in your head. No. And if we didn't cover it just recently, no, you won't. And you'll just, and you'll just make up the script. And that's what happens in these offices. This is new patients don't call very frequently, and they're divided up amongst 2 or 3 front desk people, and they just wing it. And it's just, that's why you get the results Gary was talking about. And I see it every day, those kind of results.
Okay, I got another question for you, for everybody. We're seeing the cost of staff not go up, it's actually skyrocketing. We just had our first consulting client told us he's going to $75 an hour for hygiene. And he's got some plans of how he's going to make that work. But we're seeing this across the board, across the nation. The cost of staff is staggeringly increasing. So here's my question to you all. I'd like feedback. Do we raise our prices? You could either go to the amount of whatever it's being charged to you. Do we try to sell more stuff? Everything from appliances we don't do now to Reston to you name it, sell stuff. Or do we just try to produce faster? I'd like your feedback on this. Where would you go with this? Because if you don't go somewhere, you're dead in the water. Dr. Eisenbrock. You have to unmute. Hold on. Unmute. Lori, can you unmute him?
Better?
Good.
There we go.
Okay. I do it all. I do it all. Cut the time down, sell more, incentivize.
Get out of network, right?
I haven't
Raise
gotten out
fees.
enough network. I wish I could get out of more. I'd love that 7 out of 10. Here's my statement I just thought of, and you can answer it. Do you have a specific individual answer the questions to get these conversions from insurance to non-insurance?
I've worked on this.
Good question.
Yeah.
There's people that are better at it than others.
Yeah, do you just make sure you have one good person who gets all the new patients all the time?
I mean, ideally, I would say that's correct, but I'll tell you, it's very frustrating working with the teams out there. I mean, you guys have been working with teams your whole lives. I have too. It's frustrating. And I'm so happy when I have a team that is engaged and really wants to learn. Yeah, that sounds great. And that's just not the reality of what I see out there. So yes, if you've got somebody that is engaged, really does want to learn, really, loves the process of, making you happy, making the practice better, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely, that's the person you'd want answering the majority of your phone calls.
Would you pay more money for that employee? I mean, more than
Absolutely.
everybody else, even though they're brand new?
Oh,
You might
yeah.
have to.
I don't have any loyalty. There's no loyalty points being here 20 years and you're mediocre versus somebody who showed up a year ago who's outstanding. I'll
Okay.
take the outstanding person every day of the week.
Yeah, I want you to remember that this is across the board in all dental offices. Everybody is going through this right now in their head. And I tell you, the first place they turn to hygiene and say, we're not doing enough deep cleanings, or if we did more deep cleanings, we could pay for all of this cost that's hitting us. And you're going to see people fleeing those practices like rats from a sinking ship. We're going to have the chance to bring in so many unhappy patients that have been oversold by other offices. The numbers are going to be off the chart. Some of you are going to even wonder if you still have to market, because all these people are just showing up. We're seeing dentists retiring in shocking numbers. We can't believe what we're seeing. Fewer dentists, fewer hygienists. This is your chance to gain market share. And so if it means paying more for staff, don't be understaffed. We just had a doctor who had 16 hygienists full-time. He had 4 practices. That's not an unusual number, I suppose. And he finally got the big idea when his hygiene department fell from 16 to 4. And he was trying to come up with all kind of very unusual, unorthodox ways to provide something like hygiene. It wasn't the same. People can spot it. They want a hygienist that's being a hygienist, So I want you ready. What's some ways we can cash in on that? Wes, any thoughts of how we can reach out to people, patients who are probably about to get an avalanche of stuff, including perio, pushed at them? How can we get them?
Well, I think it's all internal. So what you're going to find is your problems are you don't have the capacity for new patients. Your phones aren't being answered right. You're going to find all these problems internally that if you were just to fix, that these problems would go away. So one problem would be, okay, don't have the hygienists, and we can't hire them. So we talked about that the last time, assisted hygiene, different things you can do. But the other thing you do is block the schedule for new patients. Absolutely, you got to figure out and anticipate approximately how many new patients we should receive in a month, and hold those spots open for them. And if you're anticipating an increase like you're talking about here, you'd want to increase those numbers. Those blocks should be filled 1 week or less. If they're booked out, if those blocks are taken and you're looking at 2 weeks and all my blocks for new patients are taken 2 weeks, it means that you probably should add more blocks to the schedule. So that would be, those are the things I'd be doing and looking at.
Dr. Eisenbrock.
Would you recommend, as I've been trying, to get a new patient coordinator who's strictly responsible, not as a hygienist, but as an enroller in the practice, that all the new patients are assigned to that person because 50% of the new patients don't show up?
She have a chair?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So first is to try to solve why 50% don't show up, because there's usually a reason. So, okay, so there's a couple reasons why that happens. So you should have around 10% not show up. That's very common. Anything above that, there's a problem. And usually it's you're scheduling people out too far, or your front desk is not making connections with people
Right.
as they make the appointment, or a combination of the two causes the no-shows of new patients. Okay, so if you're not in those zones, those two things need to be fixed first. The next thing would be, yes, I have plenty of offices that have one dedicated person doing all the exams for new patients. It works great, it works fine. It's no problem. And then they kick those patients over to the hygienist to do the cleaning, and it's 30 minutes. It's the best. You have to have the operatory, and you have to have the new patient flow to support that luxury, if you know what I mean.
Okay,
You're
this,
talking about a significant amount of new patients dedicated in a column per day, at least 5, 6, 7 a day to afford that type of person.
But the new patient is worth so much money. I mean, I don't know where you got it, but I'm averaging $1,000 a new patient within the first month.
Yeah,
that's
about right.
normal.
About right.
Owners. Let's go one step farther. This discussion has almost been about hygiene, because when there's so few of them and it takes so long for one to get educated and on the market, we're running into another problem that can paralyze the practice. And what we're talking about is a staff, we're hiring a new staff person, and she drives a hard bargain. We need somebody so bad. She's chairside or front desk, whatever, and she comes in $5 or $8 above our experienced staff, and just absolutely burns the practice down. The other staff are knocking on our door within 2 hours, even though she pledged her firstborn child as ransom that she's not going to tell anybody else. The truth is, she didn't say it right. She can't wait to tell anybody else. And she tells everybody how much more she's making than the people who've been there 20 years are making. And you have on your hands, you're looking into the abyss. There may not be anybody in the office tomorrow. You know, it could just be you. And I would like to hear from you a strategy, because this is waiting for most of us. Now, some of you have, you know, you went to your chairside's wedding, and you went to this, your friends, but friends just go so far. Medical doctors thought that patients would not leave them for managed care. Later, studies show that a patient would leave a longtime loved doctor of the family for a $5 per visit savings. So yes, these people are friends, but when they have somebody, a new staff person comes in getting more money, poking them with a sharp stick saying, I'm making more than you are, until they just can't take it anymore. Do we go back and remake our whole compensation package? What do we do? Dr. Paul and Mary. Yeah.
You got to unmute though.
Got to unmute.
which is more
Better.
complicated. There you
Good.
go. Oh, you
Good.
were for a second, then you remuted.
It's back on.
Good.
Okay,
There we go.
This is exactly the biggest problem we have, is that I've given 3 raises in the last, say, 13, 14 months to everybody. Performance reviews, quid pro quo. We go over what would be expected to, why they're getting more and what they need to do more of. So it's gone really well. It's been well accepted, but we're still, I'd say, in the upper third of salaries for sure, upper quarter. But when you hear the $75 per hour in our area, it's not quite that bad, but a lot of people are going to temp services, so they have control.
oh,
And I think that's going to overdose, slow death in the next year or two too, because not everybody can work from 9 to 3, which is what some of our staff have wanted to do. And once you do that, that gets industry wide. I mean, your whole practice wide, you can't grant favors like that. So we have a high staff. We're doing well overall with all of our numbers, but the staff salary has been increasing quite a bit. So it's a real problem. And right now we're short 1 hygienist and are in the midst of a pregnancy leave. So it's quite challenging. So we have, like you said, you can't be understaffed. And I think if you have a normal Whitehall practice, you're seeing a good new patient flow, trying to build that hygiene. And Ron, we have a very good, our perio is like 22%. So I think it's going really well from that aspect. Well-trained staff, well-trained front desk, but staff shortages is the crime of the century right now.
okay, you can't, very good. Thank you for sharing. You can't take somebody coming to you and saying, everybody in other practices getting more money. Why aren't we getting more money? Why can't you take that as, for what it is? Or do you distrust that? What's your thoughts? Do we verify that somehow? And if so, how? Doctor?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's different consultants like you guys, but they publish surveys. So we have all these different accounting firms, average salaries, they do yearly polls here. So you can just hop on that and see that. Then I know all the averages from new hires, new people with 1 year experience, 4 years experience, 8 years experience and above for all the different categories of dental staff. So I know from that we're doing very high, but then you look at the want ads and it's $1,000 bonus, a $5,000 bonus sign on, and their range of salaries are high. Like if a hygienist is getting $48 an hour, it'll be 54, 55, 56. Assistants getting 28, 36, 40. And that's what they see. It's not what everybody's getting. It's the people trying to poach, quite frankly, other practices employees. So if they see somebody getting $5, $6 an hour more on the want ads, and they're real, but that's what's driving everything up so much. And majority are not getting that. They're getting, they've all had raises recently, but not to that high a level.
Good. Wes has a saying, are you getting resumes? Yeah, you could then look at how good they are, but if you're not getting resumes of any kind, that's probably not good.
Oh,
Yeah.
we haven't had a single response in 3 weeks to our hygiene ad. It's a good ad.
What's the dollar amount in the ad?
For us, it's like $45 an hour.
Try
with
55.
benefits and things.
Try 55. Try it. I mean, nobody says you have to pay it.
Well,
Try it.
my
This is what I'm
staff,
saying.
all
No,
my
you
other
don't
staff
say-
see that ad.
There's your problem. See, this
That's
is what
the
this is what I'm trying to get at. That's the problem. You're stuck with what you're paying people. I'm saying that maybe it's you're stuck here having to pay this amount, and that's dictates the ad you have to write. And that's why you don't get people. I'm saying that what I would do is I'd probably go blind with an ad and see if 55 gets me resumes. If it doesn't, then yeah, maybe there's just nobody in the area. But I would figure out what it takes to get resumes.
Ron,
And then hold on. And
All my
then I
other
would
staff
figure
see
out
that ad.
then I'd figure out the business model that would support that. You see what I'm saying?
I do, but we OD on training, we OD on adding services. We really, everything you just said, our fees are high average.
All right, you're out of network.
Delta and HP.
So there's
The
a
high
little room.
Delta Premier, but
Yeah, there's a little room. So
which is 50%.
those are all
of
things
our-
to look at, and you might be landlocked. I don't know. You know, you'd have to really go in and look at your practice, tear it all apart and decide, yeah, it's not worth it. To grow, we'd have to do this, this, and this. And we just don't have the opportunity capacity to support that growth. So it's not worth it. Where other offices do have that, and they're willing to pay extra because they have that pinned up demand. And you might decide that's not worth it. Right now, that kind of sounds like that's where you're at.
Large 2-doctor practice, growing. My daughter's my 5-year partner. I plan on going half-time next year, adding associates. So we prefer to be in growth mode.
So yeah, it's first you got to figure out where the market is. And there's a certain dollar amount where the market's at, where you start getting all the resumes and everybody else is the bottom feeder for hygienists. Once you figure out that dollar amount, you have to figure out a business model that supports it, or else you won't grow. Period.
Doctor, you used the term poaching.
I did.
I know you did. And that's pretty much what we do in dentistry. If we want to keep our patients flowing through, we got to have somebody. And so we throw a number out there and it draws people away like iron filings to a magnet. You can call it poaching, but it's kind of what it is.
Well, poaching actually, I mean, people make direct calls to
Oh, now
existing.
that's poaching. Yeah,
That's poaching.
that's
That's shining. I think that's where you go out there with the flashlight, shine. Yeah. Now,
Dr. Peterson, how about your group? Have you guys learned anything about how to keep from being hijacked, held for ransom, or is it time to pay the ransom?
A couple of comments. I had an office in Florida that couldn't find an assistant. And surprisingly, they were paying $18 to $20 an hour. So I said, okay, run your ad, because again, no response, run your ad for $24 an hour. And they filled 2 positions within 2 weeks. So that was, again, the number in that area that brought people in. I have an office up in Idaho that to combat the $1,000 sign-on bonus or things that you see like that, is giving his staff $1,000 retention bonus. Not all at once, but paid out on a quarterly basis. So it's trying to fight fire with fire in some
So
cases.
that's kind of taking the position that maybe this is temporary. That the
No.
market will swing back in our favor, maybe.
Maybe, I don't know.
well, I don't think so. That's just my opinion. You know, people could argue with me, but once they pump money into the system, I doubt we're going to see deflation on a lot. I just don't see it. I mean,
Well, I've seen hygiene go as high as it is today, and then go back to $15 an hour in parts of the country because there were so many hygienists. In other words, the market, it wasn't
It's
inflation, it was just simply the availability. That can change. I know
But
Wes and I have put on in our applications for hygiene school, we're looking for that $75 an hour job.
you can wait 5 years for that to happen, Greg, and you're going to
Unless
put
you're in
your
the
business on
military.
hold for 5 years.
In the military, they train them in 6 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's acknowledge this problem. It's a problem. So number one, we run if we're gonna run an amount in the ads that make the phone ring, unless it's a blind ad, just the ad alone will trigger our own team. If they start showing up, we know they're gonna blab and tell everybody how much they're being offered. So we have to be ready with the response. The response, you know, haven't you ever wondered at the Somali pirates who stormed those ships? You know, they got a slingshot and an AK-47, and they hold their ship for $30 million of ransom. They pay it. They typically pay it. Like right now, there are 40 ships in the port of Mogadishu waiting for the ransom. They typically pay the ransom because it's cheaper than not. So I say if this is a turning point in dentistry, we start doing some things better than we've been doing them.
Wow.
One thing we've talked about for a long time is adding something to your mixture that's more lucrative. You know, like, Gary was talking about implants and single implants and multiple implants and so forth, sedation, whatever. Those things can change your dynamic and shrink these costs into their relative place. The other is only raise the fees. Now, don't think you have to limit it to just hygiene. Let's say it's hygiene. So hygiene now is costing you $20 more an hour. Okay, fortunately, hygiene typically doesn't spread to the rest of the practice. But if hygiene goes up across the board, $20 an hour, if you just raise the price of hygiene, everybody in hygiene feels it, they hurt. Whereas if you could spread that into dentistry just a touch, everybody doesn't feel it. The patients don't feel like, wow, yeah, this will happen everywhere, but until it does, I'm leaving, you know? So thoughts on that? Anybody want to share a take on some of these ideas? Some of you feel like, I mean, literally, it's like in school, we used to have training on nuclear explosions. We would climb under our desks. That's what our teacher told us. I don't know how effective that would be if you were at ground zero and 20 megatons fell on you. I don't know, but I suspect it wouldn't be good. Climbing under the desk probably won't work. Probably time to reassess. And can I make a suggestion if you're open to this? Okay, you've hired an assistant or front desk, and you had to jack up the money until the phone rang to where you know everybody's going to approach you. One thought is to take people in your office one at a time, assume they know what you're paying this person, and say, how do you feel about that? And they're going to say, well, doctor, I've been here a long time. I really love you. But and what they'll probably ask you for isn't as much as you would have thought. Okay, but you ask them one at a time and you move forward with that. And I'm going to tell you something, for a time, maybe 1 to 2 months, that will actually act as a bonus. In other words, they got this big raise just because somebody showed up for the job. So it's like they got a bonus, but then it becomes the norm. And if you want bonus response, then you'll have to put together a bonus. Wes, you have a comment.
I was going to say, just out of just this problem that we're talking about here, I would say 1/3 of my clients are moving out of network so that they really can raise their fees. Right. So that is a response. It's one of the responses is absolutely raise your fees. And so many of us are locked in network that we have to start moving out of network. And maybe not with everything, depends on the office, but that's certainly a response. So
good. Anybody else have anything to share with us? Because these are disturbing issues. I mean, our very paychecks, the doctor's paycheck is at stake in this case.
Yes. Yes.
Especially if you were already, like Wes said, trying to make it through being in plans, you're already on thin ice.
Yep.
Greg, I have a comment, something that Gary said that was very profound about the quality of your staff. There is no position in the office more important than the clinic administrator or the office manager. And the offices that I work with that are just doing great and growing and they're profitable, they all have one thing in common, and that is they have terrific leaders. Some of them are hygienists that now are managing the offices. Some are people they brought off the street with a good business understanding, but mostly they're people from the office who really enjoy the business part and they understand their role. The offices where the leader is a long-term friend or a relative or the wife's best friend, it's 10 steps back for everyone forward. You just can't get it done. So to me, if you walk away with nothing else, look hard at the people that are in the management of your office, your leaders, because they are you when you're back in the operatory. And they need to realize they represent you. They're not union stewards for the staff coming face to face with you presenting staff needs. They are on the management team and they need to act like it. And if they can't do that, then you've got to have someone who can, if you expect to really be profitable and to move forward in these challenging times.
Wes?
I would agree 100%. Just working with offices over the last few years, you can tell right away when you kind of got a Debbie Downer as an office manager, and it's over. I mean, there's no growth, there's nothing, everything's off the table. And when you got somebody that has a can-do spirit, that's got great attitude, those practices are growing, and it's a common denominator for sure. Yeah.
You know how lucky we are, I think, to have been in this mastermind talking about this issue, having Gary Bird start out. First of all, we can vouch for Gary. He delivers the goods on time for his price. He does that. They're a little better patients than we got through mailing patients, et cetera. So if you have to raise your fees, if, like Wes says, we have to get out of networks, more networks, you can turn to Gary and say, what's it going to cost me to fill this practice with people that aren't insurance driven? And he'll put a number on that, and we'll work around that number. So, in other words, all is not lost. I think this was a good combination today. Listening to Gary, part of you thinks, oh, he's like all the marketing guys. And our experience with marketing guys is bad. They tie you in for 6 months or a year, and it's all just wait, just hold on. We got to redo your website. We got to do this. We got to do that. And by the time you've paid them $50,000 or $100,000, it becomes clear they don't know dentistry. They don't know what they're doing. And you break away and you're angry. And you go to another one who puts you through exactly the same drill until you come up with the idea, wow, this just is, marketing is bad. It's not bad. Associate practices are being driven by it. Let me tell you this, a normal mailing patient that comes in from a mailing piece usually wouldn't work with an associate. That is just a weak patient with a weak doctor. Through Gary, we get a little better patient. And with a good staff, and like Dr. Ron was saying, with a strong leader, we make it work. And so now what we're actually talking about today is the cost of staff across the board going up. And we were already not happy with what we were paying them. It already seemed like too much. I get it. But if we can buy the patients, and they're a little better patient, which we're vouching for that, and you get a good leader, not your wife's sister's friend's brother's sister, we're going to do well. we're going to do well. I can tell you that because number one, dentists are leaving the industry in droves. Number two, people are going to start pushing, hyper pushing all kind of junk through dentistry. We've seen this before. There's been eras in dentistry where we were pushing stuff, not us, but doctors. We saw them selling vitamins, selling all kind of stuff. Those people are going to drive people to your practice. Wes?
Let's say, you know, if out of network seems like one of the things that you want to look at, I would say that that's probably where most people end up, especially if you're out of kind of capacity and you have no other ways to go, is getting out of network. Some of the things to look at and track in getting out of network is obviously tracking those phone calls. What's your conversions when you actually get out of network and you get those, let's say, Blue Cross or Delta phone calls? You're not going to get them all, but it should be around 70%. What we see is the scripting and the things that you guys are using, it's 0. Like I said, it was 0 for 12. That's not uncommon. You have to make sure that you're getting a fair amount through the door. And so you start with being out of network with something with a small amount of your patients, and you look at your results. You look at your case acceptance as those new patients come in, and these things you track and you decide, okay, we're doing fairly well. If we get out of something big like Delta, figure on losing about half your patients over a year's period. Okay, and so that means you got to replace them. So it's very easy to pull up, okay, there's 400 people in Delta. We're going to lose half of them. I'm going to retain 200. I got to replace 200. So now you go and you look at, do we have that surplus of patients wanting to get in? A lot of you do. A lot of you have a fair amount of backlog of patients that want to get in. So maybe you figure you're going to recoup maybe half of those people because of the backlog. And now we've got to market in 100 people. You can figure this out, what you need to do to get out of network. So I kind of gave you the thinking that we go through, but if you're really serious and you want to do it, definitely talk, get on the phone with Greg and I'll walk you through it and see, and you can find out, what you need to do, what it would look like, how much marketing would I have to do, would I have to do any at all to figure out how to get out of network.
Or Ron.
Or Ron, yep.
Wes and I were in a practice in Louisiana once. It was an ortho practice. And he was out of network, and he was about $1,500 more for your classic class 2 ortho. And so we asked his staff, what do you tell people when they're about to hang up because they find out how expensive you are? She gave me the platitude of platitudes. She says, we give really, really good service. I'm thinking, oh, okay, it's not just really good service, it's really, really good service. And what Wes is talking about, we need to arm each of your telephone answering people. We need to arm them with a quick list. If you ever notice, like good books are written tightly, they don't wander. We need to give them a good quick list of non-platitudes to sum up the value of coming here versus going to the other practices. And there's a lot of them. It doesn't really take a lot of creativity. We have them. We just need to get your staff to say them. And patients will go, oh, okay, good, put me down.
And everybody needs to know them. In other words, you're going to have these patients show up and they're going to jab, oh, I thought you're out of network now. Everybody needs to know these answers or else. And then, of course, you get the phone calls, everything. And the emails and the letters that are sent out beforehand, explain to the patient why you're getting on a network. All those things matter. And if they're handled correctly, most of you can figure out a way to get out of network and do better, actually.
I liked what Gary said about making sure your website doesn't drive them away, because we were losing a lot of people to that. They wouldn't even call the office if they can see a bunch of names of insurance companies and theirs is not on it. So you got to start there in hopes you get a phone call, Good.
Thank you.
Anybody have questions or a topic we want to continue with? because we've held you a long time. All right, we got something we're going to talk about next month. I think you're going to really like. Lori, thank you, and thank you all for being with us. We'll be hearing from you, so we'll talk to you at this time. Wes.
I just want to let everybody know, if you have a topic that you want discussed, please email Lori and we'll try to work it in. We'll do the best we can. So please feel free to email discussions that you'd like us to discuss next time. So
Excellent. Yes.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.